Well, I would think that everybody that's coming is here. They'll jump on for the times we're late. Well, I would think that everybody that's coming is here. They'll jump on for the times we're late.
Yeah, they
Well,
usually
I would
come back.
think that everybody that's coming is here.
There we go. The Zoom was on.
It always reminds me.
We safe now?
Yeah, we're good.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Big Plains Water and Sewer Special Service District. If you please stand, we'll pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call,
Ross Gregerson, president.
Harold Merritt, President.
Denny Bass, president.
Marty Lisenby present.
Jerry Jorgensen, president.
Okay, thank you. The matter at hand is to discuss discussion and action regarding adopting of the fiscal year 2020 and 2021 tentative budget and set a date for public hearing.
This one? Who's my help?
Oh, that's what old.
Since somebody's got to start this off, I'll get the ball rolling and then we can get into discussion on the budget. Leaving the income alone right now, going down to the operating expenses. I think that we can mark out the system maintenance and repair, which included tools for the most part, and take that down to $1,000 from $3,500.
So that was already reduced. Our historic average on system maintenance is about 3,000 to 3,500.
Yeah,
So the original budget included tools and the hydrant knockoff kit and totaled 6,500. So this has been reduced once already.
yeah, I got the wrong page. I should have.
Are you showing 3,500?
Yeah,
Yeah. That's the current version. I mean, we could knock it down more, but historic average has been right around 3,000 to 3,500.
On a lot of those things, I don't know exactly where we're at, Dale. Have we accumulated pretty much the basics, so we don't know of anything that we have to go yet?
Are you talking tools?
Truly. I know that would be nice to have some nicer shiny ones, but
The district has bought 4 pipe wrenches, the rest of the tools are mine. So I was just looking to start getting some of my tools back into my shop and out of my truck, but
can
I'm willing to go as long as we need to.
we can leave
with the tools that I
$1,000
have.
in there, how's that? And then if we need to adjust it as we go along, then that's so be it. And then as far as the auto read meters,
What I was trying to say about system maintenance and repairs is that through the natural course of business, this is where things like, I don't even know, all the Schultzen's invoices all go in here. So these are things that just happen through the course of natural business that we naturally incur about $3,000 to $3,500 worth of expense.
So you're saying just for parts, for what I go down and get for odds and ends?
okay, if you think that that's where you want to keep that, we'll leave that one.
So those tools and the hydrant knockoff kit had been removed. This is the after removal
Okay.
was 3,500. And same with the next one. I apologize. Maybe I should bring it up on the screen. In your packet, everything is black and white.
Yeah, I pulled out the other sheet and I've got it now, Ben. I had the old red one.
Okay. Everything that's in red is no longer included in the budget. Everything that's in blue is new since the last version, or increased since the version that was presented last week.
Okay. Well, those are the two items that I had. Does anybody else have any discussion on operating expenses that are listed on the black and white sheet, the new one?
I just had two concerns that I wanted to bring up. The first one is, and they're both professional services. So the first one is the engineering. We have at 0, and legal fees we have at $3,000. So first hitting on engineering, we have an invoice from Rod wrapping up the source protection plan work that will either be paid this year or next. If it's paid this year, then we have to do a budget amendment, which we can do in June. If it's paid next year, then we'll have to budget for that. So
What's the potential on that balance?
it's just under $8,000 for the balance on it.
What's your preference on it?
It doesn't make a difference to me. For general accounting, accepted accounting practices, it should be done this year. If the work is complete, then we should recognize that expense this year. So
Is the work complete?
we've received an invoice for it, so I would hope so.
He didn't drive out and verify, in other words.
Yeah.
Come on, Ben.
The
No,
source
it's not all the
protection
way-
is.
It's not all the way done yet.
Now, this is only for, my understanding is this is only for well 59 Jepson and Cook, and there will be additional source protection work for Canaan.
I don't have a finished thing for those source protections. I don't have that. I know that the last time that I talked to Rod, they were wrapping some stuff up. That was about 2 weeks ago, but I'm saying officially from Rod, I have not been given a source protection plan or been told that it's been done.
Okay. The other component to that is
Finished, I should say.
with the $0 assigned there, every year there is engineering work that is done, just as requested, on-call engineering work. The last few years, 2018 was 35,000. And all of these probably are associated with projects like source protection work, but to budget $0 there, I think would be a little short-sighted in budgeting.
Let me share my thoughts on it, and then we can discuss it. In the past, we've been doing a lot of our own work. If somebody wanted something done, we'd get it engineered, and we'd end up paying for the engineer, and Dale would be involved. And I'm thinking part of our billing and our financial issues are that we have shouldered the responsibility, similar to patching the road. The person that created the issue should be the one that solves the issue. So as far as engineering, if somebody says, I want to build a house out here 300 yards from the pipeline and I need it engineered and this, that, and the other, then we tell them that they're free to hire an engineer to take care of it and shift all of that engineering burden, other than what Rod would be involved in reviewing the plans or whatever minimal work that would be done. So the people would hire their own engineer, their own contractor. Dale would oversee the laying of the pipe. But my thought is to pull back further and further from getting financially involved in all of these little hits here and there, and all these little hits start to add up after a while. And so I agree, we need some engineering. I'd say put a couple of $1,000s in there.
What about the source protection for Canaan that's not done? And what about the other wells? Do we have any other source protections that are required?
That's part of the PTFI account that we're locked in with Ensign on.
Well, that's the that's about 20 grand. That's for the 8,000, but that's only well 59 and the associated areas. It's, my understanding is it's not Canaan. Is that not right, or
Yeah, Keenan should be included in the
the new?
USDA.
Yeah, that will be in that, but Apple Valley 1 and 2 will be due for their updated source protection by this time next year, and Rod is already aware of that. It's not a full-blown source protection. All it is reviewing the old one and making sure it's up to date, that nothing has changed, homes in the area, industrial, whatever. Nothing has changed right now over by that well building, so I don't see that being a big, huge thing, but Rod would be the one to have to speak on that. I would say, $1,000 probably at the very most, because all he needs to do is just update what is existing. And we haven't had anything change over by those buildings, so I don't see a lot having to happen with
And
the
that's the only
updating.
other ones we need then.
Yes, and then
Okay.
we'll do this round again in about 7 years.
Now that
Or anytime anything changes in that source, to be clear. So if we allowed some manufacturing that was inside of the source protection zone that actually fit into whatever zone they were in, our protection zone would have to be updated to represent that. So it's not just a blanketed thing just for 7 years, just to be clear on that.
All right.
So, and I am, or we're thinking along the right line that USDA has wrapped all of that into the grant, as I understand, all engineering,
That's the way
Source
that I understand it,
protections.
yes.
everything.
Nice. Okay.
So that's part of that. So we shouldn't have to, we will, something will happen surely. But on the surface.
What do you think? It's just gonna be pass-through money,
Mhm.
pretty much?
Pretty much.
Okay.
So how do you feel about that, Ben?
It sounds like a minimal addition on engineering would be appropriate. I'm okay passing through and making sure that Rod's aware that we're passing through costs as he designs pipes for customers. The concern that I have is that we still need at least historically, we've had engineering review at that point. So, which would be appropriate for us to pay for.
Well, the reviews are even paid by the
For the customer.
person that you're reviewing for.
So okay.
In other words, when we're doing any kind of, like on the, these people we were talking to today, Forrest, and they would pay for the engineering, and then when you have Rod review their engineering, and they would get a bill for both.
Yeah,
It's
I think
their
it's
project.
exactly right. I think that we shouldn't be required and ask the other citizens of Apple Valley to shoulder the expenses of people who are moving in and from there.
I want to raise one thing is that I know that I do it, is that, I call Rod for questions all the time. And sometimes I can spend half hour, 45 minutes, an hour with Rod on the phone. So it is his time. So, we ought to think about that so that we're just at the end of our year, all of a sudden, Rod needs to be paid for some different consulting that we've asked him to do with us or whatever, and we don't have anything to pay him out of. I agree with Ben. And I think that we should have a couple of bucks in there, at least in my opinion.
What do you think's appropriate, Ben?
Sounds like if we break it down, $1,000 for source protection work for Apple Valley Wells 1 and 2. On-call work. I mean, I've heard him talking about, maybe you guys know more than I do, but he's kind of got some water rights work in the pipeline that will likely be billable.
Good point.
Yeah.
Well, you got, I know he's doing some stuff on that. Yeah.
That said, I mean, budgets are just that. We can amend it as we need to. We
If
want
we-
to get as accurate as possible, but
Yeah, if we put $1,000 in there and then we have to revisit this, which we will, then we could adjust it accordingly. But I really, the basic philosophy is that we shoulder less and less of the expenses that come this way.
Is there anything else that he has done that we don't have a bill yet on? The stuff that we assigned out months ago.
Now, that's one reason this bill may be here prior to the source protection being totally complete is that I told him that we were closing out the fiscal year of getting a new budget, and if he had any billing, he better get it to us. And,
Okay, so that's all one that showed up then. Okay.
yeah,
Ben, how are we doing the will serve letters? Is that being passed on to the customer also?
It is.
And then the other issue, I'm not sure how we want to do it, is on the potential enzyme billing. You know, how do we, I mean, would it be prudent to at least budget something, or is it?
we have $3,000 in there. I don't,
Well, I was talking not just attorney fees, I was talking about the actual payment, because it could be that we owe something, but I don't know, it's,
I might be after lunch here, but I don't think we're gonna end up paying them a dime.
okay.
I don't think they can verify or justify rather the bills. If they could, they would have seen something by now, you'd think.
We've asked for it many times.
And-
Okay.
What are we putting in now for that budget for next year?
$1,000 in
We'll
engineering.
leave it at 1,000?
Yeah, that's okay. And then as far as the 8,000 for engineering, did you want to put that in this year, Ben?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to amend the current year budget,
When do you want to do
because
that?
that expense is incurred in this fiscal year, so it would be appropriate to
Do it next meeting.
do it in the next meeting, yeah.
Just do it on the, when we finalize the budget, we just redo the okay.
Yeah,
But is that coming from the PTIF money also?
yeah, the
So
cash
still-
itself,
that's
but
still
it's,
pass through,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Let's see, with 2020, we had an estimated budget of 18,734, and year to date, we spent exactly 18,734. How the heck did that happen?
Well, this was, we amended the budget in the April meeting, and we knew exactly what we had spent to that date.
So instead of having a new number on the 2020 budget, you just matched it.
We knew exactly what we had spent, so. It's, said it
Yeah,
before, I'll
yeah.
say it again, this is a tight budget. We budget to the penny, so.
Even though we had a little ways to go. Yeah.
And I said that in the meeting. I said, if there's any other expenses that are incurred this year, we'll have to amend the budget again.
So back to the professional fees, are we thinking a couple thousand? So we have some nominal amount, 1,000 for source protection and some odd number for, is that what we decided, or did we
I
decide?
think whatever Ben's comfortable with, that suggested a couple thousand, but
A couple thousand works.
Yeah. You know, and Dale made a good point that these will serve letters, that they are a professional expense. We recover the cost through an income item, but it does have to flow out through the expense. So it's not, so we do have to account for those.
Yeah. That's another, the one thing that I haven't figured out yet is blue stakes. They spend an unbelievable amount of time blue staking. We're required to do it, and we pay Dale's time, and we get an empty sack at the end of
Plus
the
you
day.
pay to.
A fee just
for
to
the
be a
call.
part of it, yeah.
And that's another item that feeds into that system maintenance and repairs category that we were talking about a little earlier.
But I guess, yeah. Okay, then that $8,000 check will be made out in June sometime.
Yeah.
You should draw to ask about it, and
Yep.
then we'll take care of that on the, I'm assuming it would mention the date to be set, while we're talking about doing that. The regular time on Thursday, 4th of June, so. okay.
The other thing that we had mentioned though, on the engineering was that those water rights that he's trying to fix, have we allowed something for that? Because those are probably some expenses we have to pay him for.
I talked to him about the water rights, but I haven't talked to him about any billing involved in it. I think that a lot of this, frankly, will probably I would like to see it go back to the source of the issue, and that's Cedar Point. I think Cedar Point should pick up a lot of the cost here because it was pretty murky when it was purchased.
Good luck with that one.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a mission. The worst thing can happen.
I just know that it's something we gotta fix. He's having to spend a lot of time doing it. I just don't think it's wise that we assume that all this is gonna get paid for, it's gonna be free, I just think that there's gotta be some time for Rod to fix this stuff, and it's important that we get it fixed.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what to budget for it, but I'm just saying that we ought to ask the question, and maybe in the final budget, we consider amending this to include that information. If we can get a number for him, what he thinks, at least then we have a number in place.
Okay.
So anyway, it's just a thought that, because I seriously doubt that you're gonna get any cooperation from those guys, let alone having them pay for his time.
My thought with that was that we would be paid in water because there are some water rights that are held by Cedar Point that should be held by us that are being gathered up and we could, but again, seems like the more you work at it, the further you get out in the swamp. So anyway, I'll talk to him about that.
Thought we straightened that out when we had that one letter that said 812 shares belong to a certain group of people, the rest belong to Apple Valley.
Well, that's part of it. One of the issues is that there was supposed to be 32 acre feet of water in basically a slush account when the transaction was made. And that water was to fill in for oversights or people who say, I bought water 20 years ago and I didn't ever get it. Where is it? That sort of thing. Try to resolve all of those. And that's, some of those issues have been resolved, some have not. And we haven't gotten a firm number on that 32 acre feet of water. And at what point do we put that in a separate account as these things continue? One or two every year seem to pop up. And how do we solve those unless that account stays separate from everything else and doesn't continue to get wrapped up in things as we go along? So my thought is that once we wrap up what's left of those 32 acre feet and we account for where the others went, that is held as a separate account for a period of time until we think all the skeletons have come out of the closet, because Cedar Point is just full of, as Dale will attest, people that say, I bought 2 acre feet or 2 connections 15 years ago, and I don't have any paperwork, but I did it.
Yeah, I get those calls. Ben gets those calls.
Yeah, I've had a few of them contact me as well. But it's,
We also are gonna have some expense, aren't we? He said that we need to transfer some water rights into the Cook well.
Correct. Good
So
point.
there's gonna be a little bit of money there to do that.
And there's some water rights in the well that was never activated just down the road.
Mm-hmm.
The plan was to pull those water rights out since there's no pump, no power, anything, and put those in the Cook well.
Right, but it's
Maybe
gonna
with
cost a
some
little bit of money.
additional too.
I mean, I'm saying it's probably gonna cost a little money to do that,
Okay.
right?
so I think we should, would Rod be the one to be in charge of doing that for us and managing that?
Yeah, it's in process right now.
So probably asking him what that bill would be,
Yeah.
Would help us make sure we get a little bit better. Now, on the, prior year budgets, do you feel like some of the professional services that we have then were in proper billing of like a water line extension, and we got the bill and ended up paying for it instead of it being billed to somebody else? I mean, because we had like 18,000. When you get those bills, I mean, what some of that for?
Yeah, so anytime there's a pass-through cost where the funds actually flow through the district, it will show up on.
Okay,
that
so,
line.
but it also counters with the revenue items.
Right.
So right now, all we're budgeting is what we know we're gonna possibly pay,
Mhm.
not those pass-through.
Yeah.
Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, and as issues have come up recently and we've had to direct them to Rod and for services that he'd be performing for the person, I said, you would be contracting with Rod.
Okay,
It wouldn't pass through the district.
all
So.
right. Makes sense then.
Anything else?
Well, the other bold one that I want to bring up is the interlocal agreement. You and I haven't sat down and gone over that stuff, but I understand there might be some pushback on our proposal compared to your proposal, and I'd like to discuss the differences of where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah, we should sit down and do that. I don't know if it's necessary that we do it prior to passing the budget, or we go into the budget with it set the way Ken
Well,
has it now, and then we visit it later on in a few months.
well, it's part of the budget. You're cutting what you're going to reimburse the town, so in that way, it becomes part of the budget discussion.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
I mean, if this is a preliminary budget, you want to say yes on this, and then we're gonna vote on a final budget in our next meeting, and we have a discussion in between there and make those adjustments, then I'm happy to do that. In between these two meetings to
Yeah.
discuss how we've arrived at the math on this.
I think they give us more time and more ability to work on it if you have the time in the
Yeah.
next couple of weeks to do that. And
Right.
we just go with the 12,000 that's down there now for the preliminary budget.
For the preliminary, and then we'll have a discussion and we'll adjust it later on the final budget.
For the
All right.
final budget.
I'm comfortable with that.
See, Ben, I had a question on those utilities. Did you research that a little bit or
On utilities,
on the line item 6067?
you know, it came, Denny asked me about that earlier today, and I recalled that I hadn't, because 2019 was lower than we've seen in the past and what we're gonna see this year. I failed to do that. I have not done that yet. I'll take that as I'll email you guys what I find there.
I mean, it looks like 2018 was in that range, right? But then
2018 was 15.5. 2019 was the anomaly at 10,000 even.
So the other
So
item, am I interrupting? Go ahead.
I was just gonna, wouldn't that be us taking off that piece of crap Joseph Boyle with a pickup pump?
But then we're back up in 2019. And this year we're back up to, we'll end up at 15 again this year.
Oh, okay, never mind, sorry, Mike.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I feel like that we're having the budget discussion ahead of the rate discussion. And so we're basing a vote on a budget on a rate that we haven't discussed yet. And I
Yeah.
was feeling like that, anyway.
That I did it in the wrong order.
Well, that's my thinking, is that if we, because as we go into the budget discussion, the reason it's concerning to me is we have still an impact fee requirement of 231,000 to have a budget based on $10 increase. And I think every year that we've missed our impact fee pretty much by a whole lot. And I hate to build a budget based on that, to vote on that. I would feel more comfortable if we have that discussion and then we vote on the budget. That's my feeling.
So the budget as it was presented in this meeting includes the assumption of a $10 per month base
Yeah.
rate increase.
Yeah, I see that. And that generates a impact fee of 231. And last year we had 234 and we brought in 50.
Yeah.
And, then which generates a negative in our overall cash in the bank.
So my thought process on it was, a little bit of background is that this is a tentative budget. This is basically what the public will be presented as part of the budget for the budget process. Then the public hearing will have to be done for a rate increase for the final budget and a prior year amended budget. So this is a very, very preliminary budget. This is
Okay.
something to start the ball.
And then we're gonna start this discussion, then we have a public hearing, then we decide, and then we'll adjust the budget in a final meeting in the
Right.
future. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thanks for answering my questions.
So where are we at, Ben?
Well, we are, let's see, so we've been kind of working through expenses. We've touched on, I think, all the major topics that we didn't discuss in the last meeting. Mayor mentioned impact fees. So I've said this before, and I'll just say it again, we back into this number. This number is what we need in order to have a balanced budget. Right now, that number is $231,000 in impact fees. Dale and I have been tracking, these, we'll call them tentative
Hopeful.
impact fees, hopeful impact fees. That number far exceeds 231,000, but like the mayor said, that it happened last year. Last year was the same way. We had on paper over 230,000 in impact fees that were in the pipeline. So that said, it is required of the board to adopt a balanced budget, and that's what it takes given this level of revenue and expenditure. So
In viewing it from the past, and you're exactly right, as far as backing into the impact fees, is that we only have so many options. We have water sales, impact fees, connections, etc. It's not like we could have a lemonade sale on weekends, and so we're kind of tied to rate increases to push against the impact fees. And as far as raising the cost of water, when we did that originally, Denny was in here when all of that happened. We dropped about, as I recall, around 40%. And so as soon as the price went up, the use went down. I know any number of people who used to have gardens around there quit. The lawns dried up. The place looked like crap for about 3 or 4 years. And then they started to get back in the, well, that's what it is, and we want lawns. So then it started to pick up. So I think raising the price of water, the physical wet water is pretty dicey. I think you'll lose in volume. Pretty much all you'll pick up in the rate increase, and you'll get an unhappy bunch of customers. I think that the base rate, as Matt presented it, is a far better approach because it's a number that is out there. But I think one has to be careful the way they approach that too, and be realistic with it. That's just my thoughts. That the water price, if you look around the countryside, we're not the highest, but we're up there. One example is Albuquerque, New Mexico. I read an article on them. Of course, that's a big city, but they wanted to go green and they wanted to cover up some shortfalls, so they raised their water rate up. I mean, I can't give you any numbers, but it was like 50% and then another 50%. And the debate now is Chapter 11, or how are we going to do this? Because the water sales just dried up. And so that they're using that as an example of the way water service districts and water companies have tried to go green and intentionally wanted to cut water rates, their water use down, but kind of overran it. So anyway, my thought is that if something like $10 could be put on the base rate and go into the new year with whatever the impact fees happen to be. And then if we get in the middle of it, then things aren't looking that good, then we'd have to readjust it. But a note on this year, we still have 7 months left. I talked to Rod, who is working with the Gooseberry people and with Pro Value. And they're still of the opinion that they're a viable operation and they're gonna go. But we don't know if it's gonna be this summer or next summer. So anyway, all those things are out there. We probably have Kaiser Youssef, he's doing some buildings. They're out by Canaan. There's the 9 that you mentioned. There's $300,000 or $400,000 worth of impact fees just laying there, but they never seem to materialize. And I'm optimistic with the summer, even with the general mood of things, that we can pick up 8, 10 impact fees in the next few months.
That red herring we have too is the COVID-19 could severely impact everything from Gooseberry Lodges to even Youssef. And, you know, guys like that could be pumping the brakes for a year to let this market come back as well. And so that's why I hate to count on these. Jepson, I don't think it'll ever go, to be honest with you. It's my feeling on it, but I'm okay to continue the discussion, but it seems like we're switching line items. If you want to vote on this, we maybe do a quick vote on this and we can get into some brass tacks on the rate increase discussion. But I mean, it's a work meeting, you're in charge, but it's I've got a lot to say on the rate increase stuff.
Rate increase, okay, and that being on the income end of this budget, so should we vote on the expense part that we've discussed?
I think it probably makes the most sense to vote on the entire tentative budget. We've only really discussed one change from how it was presented in the packet.
Okay,
So
I move that we accept the tentative budget as we have discussed. For a second,
Yeah, second.
vote. Been moved and seconded to accept the tentative budget as discussed.
I understand it's a tentative budget and I don't like any of the numbers are on here pretty much. I feel like we've undershot what some of the expenses are going to be. And I feel like that we've also, we're undershooting what the rate increase probably should be. That affects the amount of the impact fees that are required. We bumped things off there. I feel like it should be on there, like, you know, tank cleaning. I mean, we keep kicking the can down the road. And the other issue I have is, you know, we've had discussions on the pipeline. How are we going to pay for a pipeline? I mean, this affects our budget, according to Ross, on how much it costs to operate. Yet we have absolutely nothing in here that talks about, let's put a pipeline in at all. And I feel like that we're short-sighted on our thinking for what the district needs to provide, which is cleaner water into that tank that's gravity fed that will help bypass some of this. And we have, you know, we're skipping things like cleaning the tanks, trying to save a buck.
But we're not skipping on that. That's my decision, and I've already made that inspection and consulted with the state, and I feel confident and we can go another year. We're not skipping that. American Water Works suggests every 2-3 years. In the industry standards, about every 5 years. I called Colt Smith.
Okay.
He said that is up to me and the quality of our samples.
And that's a small item in some of it. It's, I mean, are we ever thinking of actually doing a pipeline?
Yeah, hopefully.
I think we are. I think that part of the pipeline process is, in my mind, is the big issue is what's going to be the final result of the grant work that's going on, and what are we gonna show for production out of those springs when we're through? And I'm optimistic, and the engineers that have looked at it are that the volume of water will increase that's coming out of there. I think that, a personal opinion, regardless of the 2.5% of the median income having to be part of the mix for a pipeline, I don't know if they would hold solid to that. They may. If they do, then we would approach this as we have to have some rate increases to cover whatever it takes to get it done. But I know we've had several pipeline projects without that being in the mix. They might be saying, those days are gone, but
And I agree with you that it could be that at 2 or 2.5 that somehow they do that, but that's, I think we're kidding ourselves that we're gonna get to use that RCAC study for any length of time. And we're gonna be looking at a new census, and we're gonna be right back up at mid $60,000, which is 20,000 higher, which makes now our Magi go down, that percentage go way down compared to where we are right now. And we can raise our rates, and we're still gonna be at 1.75 or something, 1.75 on that percentage on the water bill rate, because we've drug our feet too much, and it's gonna cost us in the long run of it.
so if we,
But I feel like that the budget, we have a motion on the table. I just feel like that, saying yes to this budget kind of gives you a license that $10 is enough, and I don't think it is. I don't think it's anywhere near enough based on some of the information that we have so far. And, but I understand why you want to have it at $10. But I feel like it's still a hope and a prayer. I mean, the truth is at $10, if we don't get these impact fees in, we're going to be out of cash towards the end of the year. I'm not talking about, I'm talking about in the bank account that we can spend out of cash, because we're spending more than we're taking in. We lost money this year in our overall numbers. I don't know, do you have any of those numbers, Ben, or do you want
I do.
to, so we look at some of this before we vote on this budget? Are you okay with that?
yeah, fine, we can, we're after
Since
to
it's kind
figure it
of,
out, however to go about it. Just while Ben's looking that up, and running down the expenses as I had them, they come to $131,027. The debt service will pay off the aquifer study this year, so it will no longer be a debt.
That has more than this year.
It's stronger than this year.
2 more payments on that. Yeah.
Okay, well, that would be another 10,000 roughly. It'd be as it is
I haven't
now.
followed how we're backing into this.
So anyway,
I was trying to follow that too. I didn't see that, so.
Yeah, there's another way to look at the increase also. If you went to $10, but also you're only paying $1.50 per 1,000 gallons above the $10 use. That's pretty cheap for 1,000 gallons of water, $1.50. You could go up and bump those up all the way down the line, and you'll get almost another $10 or so just by doing that.
So the water, water sales, the actual gallonage charges, represent 50,000 of the $180,000 of water revenue. So, and there's other concerns, as Harold mentioned, with increasing the actual per gallon usage. It is an option, but there's more risk there than there is in increasing the base rate.
Like Harold said, they stopped watering the yard now because they won't pay that
As soon as
much.
you increase the basic rate, they're gonna stop using water. Trust me, they don't realize that they're paying $100.50 per thousand above and beyond that. They just say, well, I'm gonna quit using water.
Yeah,
They're
but
still
the
gonna
base,
pay the basic rate, and if it's increased,
but the base rate's gonna be paid because
Yeah,
that's just part
but
of the base
eventually
rate.
they'll start paying and using the water.
Well, they're locked into paying that. If
Yeah,
they want
right.
water.
And that's the safety in doing the base rate. And it's, we gotta remind ourselves a couple of things, you know, on the base rates. You know, we went and bought Canaan. We didn't change the rate at all. And, you know, it's the right thing to do, but we're not collecting anything for that. And, you know, so there's just increased liabilities that we've taken on, yet we haven't increased the rate.
Yeah, what we're doing, we're penalizing residents, raising water because we didn't do our job.
So the
2 years or 3 years ago, we should have started raising the water rates at least 2 or 3%, and we didn't do it. So now we're saying, okay, now we gotta raise it 30-40%.
Yeah.
So we're penalizing the residents for something we didn't do.
And that's what we're gonna do again, because we only wanna raise it 10, yet what we need to raise it's probably $30. And I agree that 30 is probably more than we need to raise it, but to just even pay the bills, it takes us to raising the rate almost that much money. I don't know, you ought to go through some of that, or?
Well, if you look at the
or-
study they came out with, what they showed us a while back, if they went up to 49.12 next year, let's say, that's a $20 increase. And then the year two, they only went up like 40 some cents. Then he went up to $50.26. Year three, 50.83, year four, 51.40 in year five. And they say that was what was needed at that time, unless it changed, unless we got a lot of connection fees and stuff like that in. So if you raise it now, you had a public hearing, you raise it now to $10, and then the first year, next year, raise it another 10, that would cover it minus 12 cents. So, wouldn't it?
No, it wouldn't.
So we're saying what they presented to us was false.
What I'm presenting a little bit differently than what RCAC presented. So RCAC presents capital replacements on meeting debt obligations. That's what their calculations are based on. The numbers that I'll show you right now are money in the bank. Cash is king, right? We all know that. If you don't have the money, you can't pay your bills.
Agreed.
So maybe I'll just take a minute and go through a couple of these slides. I tried to keep it really simple, so that we can all be on the same page here. So these are the historic trends from when the district's inception forward. So this is in blue is income by water sales and impact fees, and in red is operating costs on bottom and the debt service expense on top. So basically, when you take on a loan like we have a number of, there's a delay. You don't pay the bill the first year. So the first time we made that big debt payment was in 2015. And so we had piled on some cash at that time. So this number in white, 242,000, is how much we had in June of 2014. And so here you can see each year, after our expenses start exceeding our income, it just starts whittling away at that total bank account. At the end of 2018, and this is money that is actually spendable in either in the savings account and PTIF and in our checking account combined. At the end of 2018, there was $1,000 spendable money. And then in 2019, that increased for two primary reasons. There were two big commercial impact fees paid, and some of those backed standby fees were paid in early 2018. So that put the district in great position in 2019. And then in 2020, this is as of the end of April, we have 56,000 in spendable cash. So within 1 year, we've gone from 135,000 in spendable cash to 56,000 in spendable. So I've got to get this out of the way. And so this is what we're looking at for a budget for this next year, where and here, one of the big concerns here, if you can see it, is our operating costs are trending upward, which makes sense. As you add connections, as you're increasing services, as inflation happens, our operating costs will slightly increase year over year. But now we're trending downward in the budgeted category for expenses. So that's a little bit of a red flag. Our debt service is pretty high. And again, I'll touch on impact fees, but the light blue is impact fees that are budgeted, higher than has ever been received in the past. So that's the next slide here is year over year, what has been budgeted for impact fees is in blue, and what was actually collected is in yellow. So almost, I mean, every year, year over year, with the exception of 2019, we've received less than half of what was budgeted in impact fees. And 2020 is probably the worst case that we've had in operating financially. And this shows what we have to have budgeted for 2020. There's a couple comments that we already talked about in the budgeting. So this is probably the most important thing that we can talk about is our burn rate on cash. So our monthly burn rate on average in the year is $36,000 per month. So we spend $36,000 per month, monthly average, on cash leaving the bank account. We're not talking depreciation. We're talking cash leaving the bank. And we bring in on average $18,000 in water sales. So we have an operating shortage of $17,000. In the last 12 months, if you average out how much we've brought in impact fees, we bring in monthly on average $5,000 in impact fees. That means we're drawing on our savings $12,000. Now this is cash in the bank. We're negative $12,000 cash every month. So, and here it's broken out by type. So revenue, monthly water sales, monthly standby fees, and on the 12-month average of impact fees. And this is again by month, monthly operations. So our water sales and standby fees just barely cover our monthly operating expenses. And then debt service has to all come from impact fees. So this is called the cash runway, where basically we look back a few months and we say where our cash has been. That's this green line. Again, we started the year off good, where we had cash in the bank. We made that big payment in December, the $85,000 payment, and we just start trending downward because we're not receiving as much impact fees as anticipated. So this is the trend line right up to this point in July of 2020, where it starts breaking off. If a base rate change was made, what would happen at that point? If no change was made, really, okay, so operating cash, money in the bank we would not have sufficient funds to make the water payment in January, assuming that the impact fee, the rate that we're receiving impact fees stays the same, even with a $20 per month base rate increase. We're not able to make that debt service payment until we double the base rate. And I'm not saying that that's acceptable. But that's what it takes to actually pay the bills. And that keeps us in the positive for the foreseeable future. Now, mind you, this is our minimum cash requirement right now is $240,000. So imagine I'm painting a line across the top here. This is what our debt covenants that we've made when we've undertaken these loans. We have to have $240,000 in the bank. And we haven't even come close in the history. Now, when you talk to the Division of Drinking Water, they understand the situation we're in. We haven't seen the growth that was anticipated when the debt was taken on. However, I feel like it is our obligation to be a financially viable service district. and do what it takes to at least have cash on hand. If we're at least not able to meet the debt service requirements, at least have the cash on hand that we need. So like I said, I just want to reiterate, without a major increase in impact fees, even a $20 per month base rate increase would not be sufficient. We would run out of cash every time we make a loan payment. So here's the January 2021 loan payment, and here it comes again in 2022. When we make that payment, that dips it very heavily. And impact fees are the big unknown. I think we're too dependent on the impact fees. And that's the nature of the debt service and how the water systems were acquired. So
Well, that's how I remember that top line up there. That's how I remember Matt from our CAC was saying that a $29 base increase, which was about $58, put us back in the black within 5 years or something, if I remember right.
Yep.
And
that's on all the capital replacements, the debt service, the debt obligations, right?
But I don't suggest that we go that high, but even $20 doesn't even get us that trouble on it. I mean, we got to have more impact fees than $50,000 to even be able to pay our payment when it comes due, based on a $20 increase, and that's why I think that it should be at least that. But,
Amen.
and that does not give us pipeline. And by the way, the base rate in Lake Laverton is $64 right now. And the reason that is they had to replace some pipes. They did the same as us. They're just keeping the rates low. Everybody's happy. And then they have to borrow a few $1 million. And they had to raise it to that kind of level in order to get the cash they needed to be able to pay the bills. And then they went and doubled their rates because they didn't plan ahead. And that's what we're doing right now. We're not planning ahead. We're not planning ahead for that rainy day when we got to replace a tank. That's not even included in any of this stuff yet. So,
Yeah,
anyway.
my thinking on this, going back to the beginning, and probably Denny's too, when this all started, was that the impact fees were put in the calculation rather heavily because we were putting in new pipes, new pumps, new wells. Ross redid the AV1, and we thought there would be growth. Hurricane St. George was rolling along. Surely somebody will show up. Then we'd have the gas station and look around, and you won't see anything new in 10 years. And so there has been some at Cedar Point and a few splatters here and there, but the general idea that things were going to grow into the system that we have built. So we have a brand new system that is gold plated presently, and that's why we shouldn't have a lot of maintenance. We may need some more tanks, but they will be driven a big expense there by the developer, because they'll be the one causing the issue. So anyway, that was the general thinking on it, but nothing has really materialized to pull those impact fees in. Just as an example, how many do you think's on your list, Ben, of people have talked about?
So I've got $406,000 in impact fees of people that say they're working towards it. And I think 2 more came in this week. So
Dale, you're pretty much the same.
Yeah,
Same
I
range?
think my number was around 15, whatever that equals to, and maybe 15, 16 connections.
didn't include Kaiser's project also,
Yeah.
because that's an unknown dollar amount.
Yeah,
So Ben, question. So scenario, if we raised that to, let's just say we raised that $29 and we raised that up to 58, and then the citizens said, we don't like that and cut back everybody cut their water usage by 50%. that still keeps us on that upward trend though, am I correct? It's
Right.
because we're basing that off of just that base rate and that base rate paying what it's actually supposed to pay for, am I correct? So if we raised that to $58 and everybody went down to, bathing in a sacrament cup, we still make that.
Yes.
Yeah, if you look at, say, $20 or $10, whatever number we end up with, I still have to be, and the COVID virus is, there's always some kind of something up over the horizon, but I don't want to, I can see the necessity to raise it, but I don't want to put enough pressure on everybody to make enemies out of the community, which is probably gonna be some unhappy folks, but to have them cut back on the water, and we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot here, plus rocking the boat. So we could find some number that would be reasonable, so we can pay our bills, and so we don't have to catch all this up this year, but we've got to do it in the next 2 or 3 years, and visit this thing next spring and say, maybe if Gooseberry comes in, that's 120 connections on top of the ridge.
Yeah, but if it comes in, I think they owe us another 90 grand if it comes in. Because back to the COVID thing, they're still doing engineering to decide if it even pencils out for them to do the project. Keep that in mind. That they haven't brought preliminary plats, and I mean, this thing could be on hold, it could be going forward. Gangbusters, we don't know which one it is. And as we've learned with Hank's project, you wanted to start moving dirt when we proved that thing in 2 months. And we're a year later on it, and he hasn't even got the financing in line yet. So, we can hope on some of those things a little bit too much, and then we end up where we're at right now. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what's happened is we've got $400,000 out there, surely 100 will fall on us.
I think that you've done a fantastic job in trying to look out for people's pocketbooks, and I respect the reason you've done what we've done, because we care. This is why the town has tried to take on the responsibility of even, handling, paying for Ben and saving the district money as well. But, all that's got to come to an end, and we have to start paying the bills. And that's where I think that we are, is that it's, as we look at just even cash projections, it scares the crap out of me that, we need to be able to pay our bills. And now a year from now, and all of a sudden we're in this budget meeting right now, looking at the next year. If we're sitting, fat, dumb, and happy with all $400,000 worth of impact fees, we can all celebrate. We're not going to go out and buy him a new truck or anything with it. But it gives us.
Get you some tools, Dale.
Sorry.
You get company tools.
Because, we're just squeaking by here, but if we had that kind of money, you think about what could you do with that money if you had that extra impact money? First off, we could catch up on our, reserves or something. There's no doubt. But when you get a guy that's looking at doing a mainline extension that's going to help us with future connections, that's what the money is really intended for anyway. And now all of a sudden we're, burying the cost of 20 or 30% of a pipeline for this guy that wants to bring the pipeline over to Coyote, which encourages him to go ahead and pull the trigger. And we do that because we know we're going to benefit with other connections on down the line. And with that money available to do that, that's huge to the district, because now we just added how many more impact fees as we're hooking people up. And that's where I think that, I have fingers crossed we get $400,000 worth of impact fees, but if we have to plan on not getting that much and still be able to pay our bills, and then when we get it, then we can just talk about, well, do we need that much rate increase? Or because we have this many more connections, and we can look at this every year. We don't have to keep the rate high every year. But we got to pay the frickin' bills, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think on that point, I find that it'd be unlikely that we'd ever back off of anything. And so I want to be realistic about going into into raising things. I had in my calculations, just round numbers, that if we've averaged, I think, 4.4 connections since the beginning of this service district per year, roughly that number. So if we had 5 this year with the reductions in expenses and a $10 rate if Dale didn't break a screwdriver, we make it through the year. So we'd have to have 4 or 5 impact fees with a $10 rate increase.
I'm not seeing that on the numbers up there though. The $10 means we're still out of cash at the number I saw.
Well, we're talking, okay, he's got 299,000 in income. I'm on the red sheet, I'm on the wrong, yeah, 299 on the black one. If we add up all of our expenses plus our debt, it's 358. So we're short $58,000, which is roughly 5 impact fees. Because there aren't any impact fees in the income at the top. There's $2,000. But that should be like 60,000.
Connection fees are, that's operating income. Impact fees are non-operating income.
Impact fees are on the next page over, towards the back.
Well, I like them better on the first page. But can you see where I was going with that, Ben? No?
No. So you're looking at, 277 is what we've budgeted in expenses. Of that, you take out 135, that's non-cash. Is that where you're going with it?
Yeah. So at any rate, with the numbers in the discussion, what do you think, Ross?
Well, I have a couple comments. If this is based on the 60,000 impact fees?
For the last
When
12
you were running
months.
those lines and all that, is that what you were
Yeah.
figuring the 60? I mean, it
Our
looks like
average.
we've overshot them from the history, all before we ever came here, right? And we're hopeful,
Every
right?
year, right?
So my question is, okay, we have these guys they're waiting to hear what happens when we develop Canaan Springs. And they might be a tangible,
I wouldn't even,
no,
I would not even think that happens this year at all.
right, okay, I understand, but that's something they're waiting, to see, and these other projects, you guys are dealing with them, we don't know if they're real or not, maybe they are, but my question is, there's another option here that we haven't considered, that maybe we put a smaller increase this year and see what develops, because the other option we have is that we can have our payment delayed, right, with the state without a penalty, if we let them know in October.
The conversation I had was that if we would let them know in September where we were at, that they would make sure that if we didn't have any major train wrecks, that they'd get us through it somehow. That they'd work with us on the payment, be it a delayed payment, be it whatever kind of arrangement that could happen. I talked to one fellow that said that the virus has disrupted everybody on the planet, and that there's going to be help available. Not that the virus made any difference to us, but there'll be, but maybe it will, like the mayor was saying, slow down some of these projects. So the people in Salt Lake are sympathetic to the situation we find ourselves in if we can't make the hurdle. But my hope is that we won't find ourselves in that situation.
Well, but all I'm saying is, we know that we need to raise the base rate. But how much? I mean,
Yeah,
if we double the base rate, there's gonna be a mutiny in the community, I think, right? But it needs to go up something, but if we say we're optimistic that these impact fees will come in, what if we raise the base rate $10 or $15 and maybe even delayed the payment for a year if it doesn't penalize us and all of a sudden we got that cash and the increase, then we would look pretty good financially. And if things fall apart, then we know what we need to do next year. And if this money falls out of the sky, you know, and all of a sudden, then I don't know, if we possibly looked at both of those angles, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out, you know?
We have, well, 440 connections roughly, right? So $10 a connection,
If you include standby fees, it's 480 is the number.
480. So we're roughly over $50,000 for every $10 increment we put on the standby fee. And so if we added $10 to the base rate and planned on getting 5 impact fees, there's $100,000.
In
I
receiving
see.
impact fees at the same rate that we have, $60,000 of impact fees and $10 a month, we are not able to make that debt payment in January.
And we do have that on the table where we don't necessarily have to make that debt payment, but that takes off the table being able to put in a pipeline. And which would you rather have? I mean, when are we going to step up and try and get that pipeline in? That's what I'd like to see happen. I mean, everybody in Cedar Point would love to have that kind of water. We'd like to be able to shut off those pumps. And but we're not going to do it with a $10 increase and not be able to make that payment. Because if we're hurting bad enough that we can't make our payment, who's going to lend us the money to do a pipeline? And I just think we need to think out a little bit further. Sorry, my wife is talking to me. It's she says Tokerville has a $67 base rate. $67 base rate. I mean, this gives you an idea of what it takes to provide water, and these are bigger communities than us, and we know it costs us more than some people. And we've been trying like hell to keep the rates down. I get it, but if we want to, in a long, big picture, provide that pipeline and those connections, you know, $20 isn't going to get it.
Yeah, part of the philosophy of keeping them down was to try to invite people in. We even reduced commercial rates for a 6-month period, hoping that somebody would come in and take advantage of that. Nothing ever happened with that. So the idea that the low water rates would create some more interest there.
If we wanted to get a pipeline, we'd be going up to that $58 level to give us the revenue that we need to get the Magi where it needs to be able to even begin to qualify. Even at $58, I'm not sure the Magi was even high enough to qualify. They might feel sorry for us because we're a small municipality and it would be less than 2.5 that they go ahead and say yes to us. But there's a lot of factors in there, but I'm happy at $20 increase.
So you're saying that to qualify, is that for a loan and a grant or just a loan?
Well, to even borrow money, I think it's going to have to go up as high as 58.
So we
just
go
to
to
even
$58
qualify.
and we go borrow money, and then we're still in the same position we're in today, because we gotta pay that loan off.
It can work that way, but I think that the way they worked it out is when we are paying off one of the loans, that the overall outgoing out of the checking account did really increase. So I'm not sure that it would pencil out that way. There could be a similar, in other words, debt load that we have right now as far as a monthly or.
And to go back to what Ross said, he mentioned that when we originally negotiated the purchase of the water companies, and the state did say that if we get in trouble and we went to them by no later than October, November, and discussed our issues, that they would assist us. But we don't want to keep deferring our payment, because then we're just going to take it down the road for 20 years or 30 years or something like
Yeah,
that.
we've only done one deferment in 8 years. but we don't want to do it again. One conversation that took place, I've been working on this pipeline for 3 or 4 years now, but was to roll all of our debt into one package with interest rates paying next to zero right now. We're paying 2 some odd percent on 2.5 million. We've got,
Now's the perfect time to do it, but we're not gonna get there if we don't raise the rates and show responsibility on our part to pay the bills.
well, I agree with that, but I'm saying that if we rolled all of our debt into one package and included that new pipeline in it, we'd still have a lower total payment with the pipeline in
Could
the
be.
package.
Could be.
That's what,
And then we adjust the rate based on
And they
that.
may require it, see, yeah.
But then and if it looks like that, hey, we're good, we can lower the rate, we lower the rate at that time. But in the meantime, we gotta show some responsibility that we're gonna pay our bills, and that's why I don't want to defer this payment come January. We need to pay that payment because we want someone to say that these guys are financially sound in the way that they're looking at this. So that way we can qualify and show them that, we're putting our reserves, we're doing something. If we have a magi of, what is our number right now today based on everything?
1.25, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So 1.25%. So it's half of what they think that a high rate would be, half as much. And if we're not paying our payment and our magi is that low, I don't know if we're going to get that much sympathy out of them, because they're thinking, why isn't that magi a little bit higher to help give you the cash to be able to, managing the district's finances has everything to do with this right here, which is making sure that our numbers make sense to them as well. And at 1.25, that's awfully low compared to what USDA considers, high. It feels high to everybody that's been used to $25, back in those days when we had like a flat rate of $25. I remember those days, but
Yeah, back in the old days.
anyway, that's,
Well, Denny, what kind of number are you thinking of? You got one that
I was going with the 10 right away and then 10 in the first of the year, but I don't know, that's not gonna get us where we need to be. I'm not sure I agree with going farther in debt just to get our ratings up. I don't agree with that.
No,
I made it look like 20's the magic number, I don't know, but I'll tell you, that's $240 a year for some of these people around here is a lot of money.
yes.
in my mind, and I agree with the mayor, and I've worked on it, but I'd like to separate that pipeline out of the entire equation right now, and when we get the collecting facility together and we know the gallonage coming out of that thing, we can say, we need a 10-inch line, we need a 6-inch line, we need an 8-inch line, and then we'll know a number on what that's gonna cost, and we can have them say, look, we've got to jack the rates up another $10 to qualify. Go at it that way rather than think that, rather than planning our way into that pipeline right now. That pipeline is definitely.
$20 doesn't plan us into the pipeline though. That just barely gives us enough money to maybe pay the bills based on our impact fees. Because $10, we're still out of money at the end of the year and we can't pay our payment unless those impact fees show up in 7 months' time. That's not very many months. And even at 20, I don't remember the number, even at 20, I don't even think we have enough in the bank.
Yeah, how many people do we have out there right now that's building that's gonna have to pay impact fees?
So at $20, we're still in the hole. If you look at that red line, that's where that's the cash available, and you can see even at 20, we're still out of money unless in 7 months' time, we take in enough impact fees, we can't pay that payment.
If we don't take in any impact fees?
No, if we take in impact fees at the same rate that we've been
Okay.
taking.
How many people out there right now today is building that's gonna have to pay an impact fee?
One.
One. And how much is the impact fee?
And
12,000.
12?
And we could end up with 10 by the end of the year, but that's still a crapshoot that everybody comes in. Sorry?
behind you.
Yeah,
So,
at the rate that we normally have, this year's been a dry start for sure. But
I mean, fingers crossed we have all these come in, you know, we could be fat city there, but,
And
you know,
so what did, not to put anybody on the spot, Jerry, do you have some thoughts on it?
Well, I'm just looking at this graph chart up here, and it's pretty well self-explanatory. Granted, I don't know how many people who have more than one connection that are on 3 or 4 connections, personally, what they will do.
Jared, do you mind if I interject there? You make a really good point, because this is also assuming that the standby fee would increase proportionally. They would see the same increase. The break-even point on a standby fee right now is 12 years. If you pay a standby fee for 12 years, you might as well have just paid the impact fee, right? And if you double the base rate, all of a sudden that cuts in half that break-even point. And it makes you wonder, people who have a water connection probably aren't going to not pay their water bill because we shut off their water. On our 100 standby fees, we will see some loss on that. How many? It's kind of an unknown value.
yeah, but the loss is actually a positive in that when they walk away from their extra meter that's sitting on their lot that they're training horses on, if they give that up, then you're converting that into a possible future impact fee that you don't have to give away again. So if you have a few of those, that's probably not necessarily a negative.
And that wash in the long run.
Anything they paid in on that standby stays as a credit.
Right, and that's would be the sales feature of that. But it could be that someone finally sells a lot and then all of a sudden now we're collecting an impact fee instead of giving away one, so. But I just think that, I mean, $20, even then, we're still hoping and praying that we get enough impact fees by the end of the year, $20 increase. And I know that it's no fun to do this, but I mean, we're talking about the potential of being in the hole come the end of the year with a $20 increase. And we've been losing money. And when you demonstrate in a public meeting that we've lost money for the last 3 years, the town's helped us out, trying to help cover some of these expenses, we have to do this. This is crunch time. And that's really what it comes down to. And even the $20 we're talking about, we should be doing easily the $29 increase, because of that puts us in the black compared to anything else. And we're still not talking about any depreciation or putting money aside for, our reserves, or we're not even talking about that. No new pickup for Dale or anything like that. And
Can I say something? I think that we all realize where we have to be financially. For me, I think the question is, because this is self-explanatory, if we keep going what we're doing, of course, we're just going to get further and further behind. I think we all realize that. I think what we need to be discussing is how we're going to present this to the town. That's the way that I feel about it. The $10, the $20, I get it. Anybody that's dealt with finances, you can see that that's where that's going to go. We're going to get a slew of questions about the impact fees. We're going to get all of these things that we're going to have to answer these questions. And for me, I look at this and say, kind of what Jerry was saying. The graph doesn't lie. I mean, it shows us where we need to be. And that's why I asked Ben the question, because my concern was, well, people are just going to stop using the water and they're going to just still flip us upside down. But that's not the case, because we'll still be able to make that with that base rate. I have to say, business-wise, that's really comforting. But politically and dealing with a community that you just can't put this on a bunch of folks. They're on fixed incomes, and it can literally choke people out. Anybody that's grown up in a small town, there is elderly people that are on fixed incomes. $10 is everything to them in a month. So I think that what we need to be talking about, I think we all realize that this has to happen, and counting on the graph doesn't lie. We all hope and wish that these impact fees are going to come in, but they don't come in. Basing that to go forward, I get all of this. The mountain I feel that we all got to climb is, what can our community actually deal with? We know what we need to do financially. I think that what we need to start looking at now is what can our community actually deal with this year and the hit that they can take. The suggestion that Ross made, that should we do a compromise? Let's see if they'll start coming in. And if they don't start coming in, it's not like we can't just do this all over again and say, we need to do a rate increase. We can do that rate increase if we need to, up to that $29 at a time. Folks, man, there's a lot of people that this isn't going to be something that's just going to make them angry. This is going to cause some people some hardship. And I don't think that part of it is fair, because I feel like we're kind of subsidizing what's going to happen in the future by hitting everybody right now with this big one. There's just a big picture for me, but for the end of the day, it's what about the people that we actually work for? And part of that is being responsible with our budget. I completely understand that. But people also need to eat. They need to have some balance in their life. And I think that's the biggest question we got in front of. I don't think anybody in this room argues where we're headed. It's just how we're going to present this to our community. And we need to come up with some type of a compromise that first and foremost to me takes care of our community financially and communal. And that is maybe to come up with, like Ross said, for the time being, adopt something that's reasonable. $10, $15, $20, 21, 22. It doesn't. It shows that it's not going to happen. But I think we need to talk about a compromise on that and watch what's happening with our finances. Ben would be the first guy to say, guys, this isn't trending right. And then I think we need to come back and revisit how much we need to increase again at that time. That's just my opinion.
Well, anybody else have anything? And I'll throw 2 cents worth in. When we can work on this, I would suggest that we do $10 with the idea that that goes into effect 1st of July. Ride the impact fees for 2 or 3 months, see if these things start to roll in. If not, then revisit this 2 or 3 months before the end of the year. And surely if we have 2 or 3 impact fees with those 2 increases, we should be able to make the day. But if we can make it on a $10, and then I would think that we'd have to visit it regardless of what happens with another $10 increase at some point in the not too distant future. The part of the problem, and the mayor is exactly right, has been wishful thinking that there's going to be a small grocery store that's going to open and 2 or 3 houses behind that, and a hardware store. Apple Valley will blossom and it'll solve our problems. It hasn't happened. So we can't think that it will happen. We've burned the candle on that one. And so anyway, the $10 at this point, write it for a couple of months, see how the impact fees come, then readdress it. What does everybody think on that, Jerry?
Yeah, eventually though, we're gonna have to go with the high, what I'm thinking and what I want to tell the mayor was, right now we're in a coronavirus thing, and there's families out there too that aren't working. I mean, I have neighbors next door to me that they only got 1 person in their household working. I don't know, maybe we gotta find a level playing field, but I can tell you right now that 29 is looks like to me before the end of the year, as soon as gonna have to happen, because we gotta operate in the green. Somewhere down the line, we have to operate.
This is what you call being between a rock and a hard place.
And I'm afraid of it, because I have a daughter-in-law and a son who it'll devastate them pretty bad. And all of us, I mean, but it's inevitable. We have to have this because this is our water system. And water systems are very important.
Well, the other thing I probably should point out is that on the last probably 3 audits we've had, the CPAs have told us we should be raising the rates.
Right.
And so the discussion probably should have been last year where we raised it $10, and then this year we're going another $10. And so we're really behind the 8 ball where we should have done it even 3 years ago, back in 2018, where we raised it to $10 even then, to put us on a better place where we're at right now. And now, because we've dug ourselves into this hole, we were afraid to bite off the 20. And we're trying to do the 10, but the 10 in the graph shows us that we're gonna be out of cash by the end of the year. At $10 come November, we don't have any money to not only not pay our payments, but pay the bills by November. And that's why that I don't like the idea that if we're gonna increase it, we gotta say that this is just squeaking by, folks. Nobody's getting new pickups. This is just squeaking by at even $20 based on the amount of cash that we burn, based on how much we lost the last 2 years in a row, based on the town trying to help us as well. You know, we need to at least go the $20 just to even, and that doesn't even get us out of trouble. That's just barely squeaking us by at that. And that's if nothing severely goes wrong. That's not buying a new pipeline or any of that kind of stuff. That's just barely squeaking by. Is it $10? We're out of cash according to this in November of 20. Based on cash projections of how much we spend per month. If you just cast that out. And I mean, if we had see, if you think about it, if we got lucky on the impact fees by the end of the year, that just means that we would have a little bit of extra money in the bank instead of, as that graph shows, out of money. It wouldn't even be a heyday. It would be just like, whew, we dodged a bullet, and you know, we're able to pay our bills in January through March because we got a couple of extra impact fees. We're not talking about, you know, a bunch of extra money laying around at $20. The numbers don't lie up there with what it takes to pay the bills, and that's why I think that we've got to. And I get that when it comes to the coronavirus and people that can't pay, we already have things in place as far as our policy goes, that we're not turning anybody off. If someone can't pay because they've lost a job, we get that. We're going to be carrying them. And that's probably something we haven't voiced to the people yet, but we need to be able to let people know that, I mean, they're going to pay it eventually, but if they're out of work, we're going to be working with them, you know. But anyway.
Ross, you conjure up a number you're comfortable with, and we'll run it around the room and see where we end up. I'm comfortable with it. The $10 is cutting the dog's tail off a couple inches at a time.
I think we've got to go at least 15 or 20, and if we got to go through this process, with the public and all that, I mean, I like your idea of kind of watching it, but on the other hand, we'll be back here doing it. You know, we'll be back here doing it.
2 and 3 months.
Yeah,
And then
in
it's
2 or
too
3
late.
months, and then you have to have another public hearing and all that, don't you, for that? Yeah,
What do you think, Dan?
Well, I kind of agree that, you know, even though I don't like doing it, I think probably the $20 is the maximum I have to go for, because like you said, there's a lot of people who's going to be hurt by that. The 10 I like, but I can see it's not going to work. So I would look at the 20, but I wouldn't go any higher than that right now, because the conditions of everything that's going on, especially with the community. And then we review it in 3 or 4 months. If we do get some impact fees in, which is 1, and hopefully there's 3 or 4 or 5 more, then we're not going to make any money, but at least we'll be stabilized enough to pay our bills, and then look at it again the first part of the year.
Jerry?
It's agreeable.
This shows the state we're making an effort also.
That's an effort, and hate it or not, I don't like the idea, but we've got to do it. We can't be operating in the red.
When we're showing people that we've lost money the last couple of years, it says a lot that we've been trying to keep them down. Respectfully so. We have been trying to help people all along, and now we need some help because we can't pay the bills. We can't keep going in the hole every year.
But you also tell them they haven't raised the rate since we started, and that's our fault. We should have raised it 2 or 3% a year the last 4 or 5 years, we wouldn't be in this position, but we didn't.
That's how the water district, Conservancy District
That's
does it.
right.
They go up 2-3% every year.
And we need to set up a plan to do that, after we get this thing stabilized.
I've got a yellow pad at home with projects on there about that long, from Jefferson Canyon to Gooseberry to some projects for Travis Holmes, and it's always tomorrow.
Well, that's
Yeah,
the
he's
bad
gonna-
part. We can't count on stuff like that anymore. We gotta start doing something on our
That's
own.
kind of led us into where we're
When
at.
he puts that graph up there, I mean, our anticipation has always been way greater than what happened. And now you throw in the coronavirus, like you say, that could delay people. I actually, I think we need to do the 20. And I didn't think I'd say that, but we got a lot of pressure on us. Carol, that you was trying to run this district, and all of a sudden, we've done everything we can. We've been out as volunteers to do everything we can. There's not much more that we can do. I don't see.
Unless we get a hand pump and have you out there doing this.
I'm getting a little old to do that.
Seriously though,
Daytime,
it's,
well,
seriously though, if every impact fee came in this year that we know about, that puts us in a position where we can back off on this maybe $5 or something. If we had this magic 400,000 all of a sudden show up, we can revisit this and it can go right back down to something more reasonable to help people out, if that's what we felt like was the right thing at the time based on finances.
well,
But
that'd be-
today, we gotta be paying bills in November. We can't not let that happen.
You could even trigger, when this is adopted in the ordinance, you could trigger that if the debt service is met. There's certain things that you could do. I don't know.
Or, we're still shy on a lot of things, so,
Yeah.
but at the same time, if we got a bunch of money and we felt like, let's give people a break,
Well, as long as we got a reserve built up to protect us and there's no problem right
It's-
down the line, we can't just say, okay, we got this 400,000 and now we got these extra dollars, so we're gonna give it back to you. And now,
well, we're not
6
gonna
months
give it,
later, we end up finding in the same position we're in today.
all through, and, I would rather be writing a check to help pay for a pipeline that's going to be more connections, which is,
Right.
heading in a better direction, I think, for the district overall, but,
How would the $20 increase be something you could live with, Mayor?
Yep, I think that at least it pays the bills. It doesn't, do everything we need to do,
We're
but
no
at least,
reserve.
at least pays the bills, and that's what we need to do right now. So I'm good with that, and I know we're gonna get some pushback on it in the public hearing, but we have a lot of ammunition to show where we've been losing money. We've been trying to do everything we can, and we probably should have done this step 2 and 3 years ago, according to our CPA.
We put off another couple of years.
And-
then-
The other, and the other thing that is covered for us is our CAC did a study for us, back to what you're talking about, the sales pitch. And they said our base rate should be $111 based on our expenses and our components, and that's how much we should be raising it. And we're not even doing half of it, so, because we feel like we can just skim by and pay our bills at this rate, so. Anyway,
Okay, to go back to the beginning, is there anything else we need to discuss before we vote on this?
So all that we need to do tonight is vote on the tentative budget, which would, just with those 2 changes, engineering and the base rate. Again, this is just a tentative budget. We don't need to take any action on water rates. This would just be, the next step would be the public hearing in the first meeting in June.
And you accuse me of pushing things back.
Well, but if we're going on the tentative budget, it would change if we go to the $20 a month, that number, right?
Those would be the 2 changes that would
Yeah.
take place, yeah.
Okay, anybody want to make a motion on that?
if you're okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the tentative budget with $20 a month base rate increase. Is that how you want to do it?
Second.
And I'm an aye.
Vote.
Yeah, aye. Will you vote?
Yeah, that's it.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Can I add to my motion real quick that that would also show a decrease in the expected impact fee requirements as well? That's all right, you guys. All right.
All right, I think as far as the agenda, that had item 2, discuss the water rates, I think we've been there, so I'll entertain a motion to,
I make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Aye.
All right. Now, do we have to give, how long of a notice do we give for a public hearing? 7 days or